In this tutorial, we cover a few advanced features of Gizmo. We start with an experiment where we have a 3D wave that we can use to plot a Mobius parametric surface. We also have an image of August Ferdinand Mobius, which we downloaded from Wikimedia Commons. So this is a free image that we can use. Let's first create the Gizmo plot, and to do that we'll go to Windows menu, New, 3D Plots, and choose Other. This opens for us a blank Gizmo window. We'll go to the object list, we'll append a new object, and in this case the object is going to be a surface. The source type is going to be a parametric wave, and when we chose parametric wave, the only appropriate suitable parametric wave in the data folder is already selected for us, and all we have to do is click OK, and we have surface 0 here. We'll drag surface 0 to the display list, and this gives us the Mobius parametric surface displayed in the Gizmo window. To make it look a little bit better, we're going to right click in this window, edit background color, choose some other kind of color for the background so that we have something other than white, say OK, and there we go. We have a parametric surface displayed in Gizmo and some background color. Now let's return to the picture of August Ferdinand Mobius. The picture was a PNG image, so when we look at the wave here in the data browser, we see that it has 4 layers. We only need the first layer of this. So to get the first layer, we'll use image transform /p = 0. That will get us the first plane. Get plane, and the name of the wave is Mobius picked. When we execute that, we have a new wave called m_image plane, and that's the first plane in the image. At this point, we need to convert this image into texture. We'll do that again using image transform, and the command is going to be image transform /text = 5. That's the appropriate parameter for converting a grayscale image, and the keyword is image to texture. The name of the wave is m_image plane. When we execute this command, we get a new wave here called w_texture. Now I want to create a texture, and I want to be able to move the texture around, scale it, and so on. And to do all of that in a way that does not affect the rest of the surface, I'm going to use another advanced feature of Gizmo, which is a group object. So I'll go here to the object list, and I'll append a new object, and I'll choose here a group. In this new info window, you can see that it applies to group 0, which is the first group. The first object in this is going to be texture. So the default object name is texture 0. I will choose the appropriate wave, which I created earlier. It's w_texture. The wave format is going to be RGBA. That's what the image transform operation created for us. I'm also going to change the width and the height to, this has to be a power of 2, so I'm going to make it 256 by 256, because that's based on the resolution of the original image that I brought in. I'm going to say OK here, and this created a texture 0 object. Now comes the display list for this group object. Now remember, the only thing I want to do is I want to be able to modify, scale, translate, and whatnot, only the texture, not anything else. So I'm going to append an operation here, and I'm going to append matrix mode, and in matrix mode I'm going to use GL texture. The next thing that I'm going to do is append another operation, which is going to be an identity. This is how you begin any sort of spatial transformation. Following the identity, I'm going to add a rotate, and the rotation angle will be 0 at this point, but I'm going to rotate about the z-axis because I'm really not going to do any other rotations except one that is about an axis perpendicular to the texture. Once I got the rotation in place, I can add a translation and scale. So I'm going to add a translation, which is by default 0, and I'm going to add a scaling, which is by default 1. In other words, it doesn't change the texture at all. So after all these transformations, I'm going to actually put the texture 0 object on the display list. And finally, I'm going to append one more operation, which is matrix mode. I want to revert the matrix mode to what it was before this group object started. So with this, let's recoup. We have a matrix mode operation that tells us we're going to operate on texture, loading identity, rotation, translation, scaling, the actual texture, and reverting the matrix mode. I'm going to close this group object. So now I have my old parametric surface in surface 0 and my group object here. Coming to the display list, I'll move the clear color up so that it appears before the surface 0 object. I'm going to take this group object and insert it above the surface. And what you see is that now I have the picture of August Ferdinand Mobius appearing right on the parametric surface that bears his name. Okay, now I created, before we started, I created a little panel that actually lets me control and vary the different rotation and scaling that I have within group 0. So I could go in and say change the scaling here to say 1.5, and as you can see, change the scaling of the texture without affecting the underlying surface. So my little panel controls all that, and we'll bring that panel up so it controls the rotation, the scaling, and translation. So if I just change the translation, you see how the texture moves along the surface. If I change the scaling, you can see how we can go from multiple repeated copies of the texture to a single one. And we can also rotate the texture about the surface. So let's recoup what we have covered here. We created a texture object and we created a group object and combined the two in order to control the texture on top of a parametric surface. This concludes this tutorial.